Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Do Good podcast with myself, Rob Watson. And in this episode, I had the pleasure of inviting one of my neighbours over actually for a cup of tea and a chat. Elly Roberts set up WhyResolution Runners, which is a local running group. I think about 3 or 4 years ago now that she set it up, and I joined along about 1.5 years, and I just really wanted to share her story because I believe that she's really helping to transform people's lives and give people a space, a safe place to come, learn how to run and to be outside and to do it in like a nice, safe environment where you can connect with people. You can build some good friendships and stuff. And I just think, you know, as I touched on, like right back at the beginning of my very first episode, which was, you know, Be the Change, and I talked about, you know, there's people everywhere, you just don't know who they are. And, you know, it was great for me to be able to think, you know, there's someone on my doorstep who I believe is doing some good, and I can think, you know, can hopefully inspire other people to do it. So it's a good episode. I really enjoyed our chat. There's loads of tips and advice in this one, and people who are looking to maybe start running or join a running club or even set one up. And it's not just about running, it could be any form of exercise or any form of activity really. I think there's lots of good little tips in here. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this one. Before we get going into it, just wanted to share a couple of nice comments that we've had. One just popped up today on Twitter from Karina Geddes. I hope I've got your name right. And she'd listened to the Never Give Up on a Good Thing episode on my last one, and she says that she couldn't recommend this podcast enough to people, and now she'd had tons of rejections over the past year, but it's what she really wants to do, so she's going to give it her all. So it's really nice to hear that and to see people that have really you know, it's inspired them in some way, the things that I've been talking about. So thank you for that, Karina. And then another one has come through from Sally Strawberry. I really do hope that is your surname because it's an amazing surname. And she just wanted to say that she'd been doing a great job on the podcast. She'd been guided to it somewhere, and she'd been listening to a couple of episodes, and she really enjoyed the carving out time episode, which she was listening to while she was decorating. So, and she said it was full of perfect little tips for her around decluttering and as she moves into new house. So that is really good to hear. I thank you. I really appreciate these comments. They give me a boost because I'll be honest, there's certain times when I kind of feel like, why am I doing this? And I know I'm doing it for me because I'm growing by doing it and I'm sharing people's stories. But it does really help to just hear some nice things from people that they are getting something out of this and that people are listening to it. So thank you. So without further ado, on to the episode. Firstly, thanks a lot for taking part.
That's okay.
So yeah, we've just been out on our morning run, Saturday run. I think
yeah.
No better way to start the weekend, I think.
No, I would agree, definitely, yeah.
I had a little count round as well. I think there was just under 50 of us this morning.
Yes. Good turnout. Obviously, we've still got beginners, which affects the numbers a little bit. But yeah, no, it was good. It's nice to see everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always got a good feel. Like when I started in it must have been about 18 months ago. That's the thing that I sort of felt so drawn to. It was that when I first started, it was very supportive, very much like community based. It was non-competitive, very encouraging, very supportive. Where maybe I'm a little bit aware that was perfect for me, because I think before that, when I go out running, I'd always be saying, like, I've got my clock on and I want to be beating a time and I want to be running faster. So to be in a group where it wasn't so much like that, but over time you just naturally get fitter and stronger and healthier.
Yeah, I think we sort of found a bit of a gap, I suppose, in local provision, because if you really are results driven, then there's plenty of running clubs around that can, you know, sort of help you with that more kind of focused training. And when we started, we were very much wanting to work with beginners, people who were new to running, nervous about running, or just lacked kind of confidence in themselves in terms of that kind of level of fitness and endurance. And we didn't want to put people under any pressure ever to enter a race if they didn't want to, or feel that they've always got to run, you know, kind of further and faster. And there are times within the group when there are some dynamics that I think make people feel that maybe that's what they need to do, but we try to keep that out of it. And it's just about getting together twice a week and running at a chatty pace. The social aspect is as important as the kind of running aspect, really. So it's meant to be, and it is a very supportive group. It always has been, and that's one of the reasons I'm kind of most proud of it, really. I suppose it's lovely seeing how everybody supports each other and everyone recognises the achievements of people who do their first 5k, however long it takes them, and our fastest runners will be just as impressed by that as they are by kind of super speedy results as well. So it's nice.
I noticed this morning, I think it was the first time the beginners group did this 5k loop, and at the end, everyone's clapping them along the line, giving them a cheer halfway through. It gives them such a boost because they'll feel they've made an achievement themselves, but to get that bit of encouragement as well,
I hope so,
would just get them out. They'll go like, okay, I'm going to turn up again on Wednesday.
Yeah, exactly. Saturday. I hope so, and I think it's we can all, I think the thing, because of the way the group's grown, actually the vast majority of people can remember exactly how that felt. So they've all done that kind of first 5k, and they know how tough it is and how you do have to just keep yourself going. There are so many role models, therefore, within the group who are able to turn and say, 2 years ago I couldn't run at all, and so it's a nice kind of, there's always somebody that you could look at and think, well, if they can do it, then so can I, and that's another nice bit. We're not full of sort of super athletic looking people that you think, well, it's all very well for you to say it's easy. It's not like that. We've got plenty of people who know the tough side of running and have kind of been through those days when it's just really hard and everything's difficult.
I found that with the group, you can sort of get a sense when you talk about the feel of the group and the community and the support vibe, where some people generally maybe in the group wouldn't feel comfortable maybe going to a gym and being in that environment where it might feel like there's mirrors everywhere, and it's like, how hard can you run or climb or push it? It's just like it's just about showing up, and like you say, the chat, the actual social side is just as important. It
is, and I think we're very aware that with our complete beginners in particular, you're often dealing with people whose experiences of sort of physical activity have been completely negative. So it's going back to school, it's being punished by being made to run around the school field, say, or the last one to be picked for a team, or hating every step of a cross country thing that you have to do once a year, and all of that, and there are a lot of barriers to participating in that type of sport if you're not careful, and so we try to remove as many of those as we can. So we don't actually ask people to sign anything or to join anything. It's up to them to make the commitment, in a sense, and we know that often the hardest thing is turning up for the first time. That's often the bit that people find really, really difficult, and I've had people arrive and say that they've been sitting in the car for 20 minutes, and that they were, one woman one week, she said she cleaned her whole house before she came out, and eventually her husband sort of drove her out the door saying, will you just go, but they are very nervous, and what's lovely is that as the weeks go by on a beginner's course in particular, you just see that growing confidence, and it's not just about running, it's everything, it sort of encompasses a lot of other aspects, and they start wearing proper running clothes. They don't, initially they'll turn up wearing sort of sweatshirts and really baggy clothes, and there's often a lot of body shame that goes alongside trying to make those sort of first steps towards getting fitter, and gradually that comes off, and they start wearing lycra, and they sort of start thinking of themselves as being people who run, and that's quite a shift in mindset, and it can often lead to sort of growing self-confidence in other areas of life as well, which is lovely, really lovely.
It seems to feed a lot of things. I'm interested to find out about the model. So is the Couch to 5k that you
that's the course we use with the beginners. It's an NHS devised and approved course, and we've used it kind of from the word go. The very first course we did, when you look at it, if you've not done it, it can look a little bit terrifying because it has these kind of jumps. It starts in week 1. Basically what they do is a minute of running and 2 minutes of walking, and they repeat that 8 times, which doesn't sound like very much at all, but it's surprisingly difficult if you haven't run at all forever. And by the time you get to week 7, which is the week that they've just done, they're running for 28 minutes without stopping, which isn't very long actually. And when we first did it, we looked at it and thought, I don't know whether they're going to get... And we didn't have enough confidence really in the plan, so we tweaked it and tinkered with it, and we did it a bit differently. And it was fine, and everybody got there. But the second time we did one, we thought, well, maybe let's just stick with exactly what's on the programme, and actually it works. So on the whole, although we are flexible, we recognise that sometimes people do progress at different rates. Sometimes people have to miss a week because they get a cold or they're on holiday, so there's always room to sort of tweak it, to repeat a week, to, in theory it takes 9 weeks. We always allow about 10 so that there is room for people to catch up if they miss a bit. But actually, it works, and it's quite interesting, sort of putting somebody in front of their first extended period of running for the first time, and you can see them all thinking, but last week we were only doing 8 minutes, and all of a sudden we've got to do 15 non-stop, or then 20, and but they do. It's very clever the way the body adapts to what you're demanding of it. So it works really well. There are other Couch to 5K, but they're all based on walk running to start with. That's how it starts, and you basically gradually extend the running bits and shorten the walk bits until you eliminate the walking altogether. But the key to success is running the running bits very slowly, and that's the mistake that an awful lot of people make. Is you think back to your school days when running was about running as hard as you could. It's not about that. It's about sustainably running and being able to sort of keep going. So you have to find a pace at which you can hold a conversation, and that's part of the justification for doing it as a group. Is talk to the person next to you, and if you can't talk to them, then you need to slow down and you're running too hard. So I think when doing it by yourself is therefore harder for lots of reasons, and that's one of them, because actually gauging that easy pace if you're not talking is quite difficult. And when we started, it was partly about providing an environment for beginners so that they didn't make the mistakes that a lot of beginners make, and are therefore why they give up. And both Sophie and myself had kind of gone through those phases and looked back at our early days of running and think, we didn't know what on earth we were doing, and somebody had just taken us to one side and said that's the worst possible way to try and train, then we would have been in a different place much quicker, kind of thing. So that was partly where it came from, and then we thought, well, let's start with complete beginners. And it kind of grew from there. So when did Revolution Runners start? We started in January 2015. So it had a bit of a long gestation period, because Sophie and I, who were neighbours at the time, and we bumped into each other a few times, just as you do. And then one night we bumped into each other on the train, and I was in running kit because I'd just done a sort of training session, and she was just thinking about coming back to running after having had her twin boys about 18 months kind of previously, but we're saying, I don't really like running by myself, and so we decided that we would run together just once a week, which we did, and we chatted all the way around. and I was kind of starting to run a lot more regularly and a lot more seriously, and I was looking into sort of the proper ways of training, and I'd also decided to do my first half marathon. This is in about 2013, and Sophie ended up training alongside me, and then at the last minute thought, well, I've done the training, I might as well run the race, and so she did, and we both did our first half marathon, and on our long training runs we talked about all the early mistakes that we'd made and the idea of setting up a group, and so we both went and did the Leader in Running Fitness course that England Athletics organise, which basically England Athletics then insure you to kind of lead running sessions based on like the Couch to 5k, and so Sophie did hers, and then a bit later I did mine, and we spent another 6 months talking about it, and then finally we thought, right, we need to just do it. So we thought January would be a good time because New Year's resolutions, and that's also where the name came from. So I just stuck a post on Facebook in the local network page. We decided we would do Saturday mornings. The theory being that we would get people used to being up and running at 9 o'clock in the morning. So when they'd done their Couch to 5k, they could then go off and do parkrun because they would be used to the concept. That's never happened because everybody's decided that they'd rather run with us. And we did the first one, and then we thought, well, the Couch to 5k is based on 3 sessions a week to really sort of get you fit. And we thought, maybe if we're only meeting once a week, that's a big ask to expect people to find 2 more occasions to run. So we quite quickly thought, well, let's do another one on the Wednesday evening. So we did, and then they only have to do one themselves, and that patterns work quite well. But within about, we must have got to, we were getting towards the end, I suppose, of the first beginners group, and they were all saying, if we stop running with you, we don't think we'll carry on running. So we were like, oh well, I suppose we could just keep going. So we did, and ever since then we've kind of intermittently run a beginners course, but we've had the kind of main group, as we call them, has been fairly constant all the time, and which isn't what we intended. When we started, we thought we'll run 2 or 3 beginners courses a year, and in between times we would just do our own thing, but that's never happened. We've just kind of carried on, and it's grown in numbers ever since, really. So we started, I think the very first session we had about 10 or 12 people, and we, as you say, today we had around 50. And the main group, people come and go a bit, which is fine. Tends to be somewhere between 20 and 30, I suppose. And then the beginners, generally we find out of each beginners group, maybe half of them will really stick with it, and the others drift off. Sometimes, having got to 5k actually and sort of ticked that box, they kind of know they've done it, but they don't necessarily want to carry on running, and others, life just gets in the way, and you know, and sometimes they then come back. We have had people do a beginner's course more than once, and it might take 2 or 3 times before it kind of really embeds and becomes a habit and a thing they realise that they really, really want to do, and that's fine too. You know, it's not about judging people. It's about providing support for them and help if they want to do it, but we're not going to criticise anybody for not being able to come one week, or you know, that's not what we're about either. So
what I always love about it is that knowing that it is a fixed time. It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday, 6:30 on a Wednesday, and in a way, because I know that's on, that pulls me out. Before that I would run quite sporadically, like about once or twice a month on my own. There was no one there feeling like they could encourage me. I had to always have that will, and I'd start doing some of the park runs as well, which you touched on. So you do the park runs. Does the beginners group lead up to a park run as well?
Yeah, we've tended to. to do them every so often, and as a bit of a kind of graduation for the beginners, we encourage them to do a park run, and generally we wait until maybe 2 or 3 weeks after they will have completed the course, so that they've run the 5k distance a few times before they do it, and we've tended to go to the Warrington one because it's relatively easy course, and just to show them that it's there for them. It is a thing that they could do every week if they wanted to. It's free. It's you get a time, but it's not a race. The only concern I've got at the moment is the Warrington one is so successful that it's massive now. So it's sort of between 500 or 600 runners. Wow. At the moment, which is bigger than some 5k races that you could enter. So I think we might wait a few more weeks, because I think some of our more nervous ladies will be absolutely terrified by the idea of running in front of that many people. So we might leave it a little bit longer than we usually do. But yeah, it's a nice way to finish, and usually we're made really welcome. We get a shout out from the parkrun director, and and they get a round of applause, and they do realise almost as soon as they get there that it is, on a bigger scale, it's just as supportive a place to run as it is with us, and even you've got some very quick people at the front of Warrington Park Run, but they, we always tell them you're not going to be the last, and there are plenty of people just like you, and who are finding it just as tough and just as difficult, and if you want to walk, doesn't matter.
I love the ethos of the park run. My cousin would encourage me for a while, say come and do the park run. Didn't know much about it, and I just turned up, and I love that it's all volunteer run. It's got, like you say, some people will be running around in 17-18 minutes, other people will be walking with the kids and do it in an hour, and in between that you've got people who'll be running with the dogs, or be pushing a pram. It's just got a really nice feel to it. It does. Very supportive, and like you said, then I do the St Helens one, and they would be giving shout outs to people and saying, such and such is running the 50th park run and 100. It's just got that really nice supportive nature to it. And you can see why it's become so popular. Did it start in the UK?
Yes, it did. I think one of the London ones was the very first one, and it's now, which is now one of the largest. And that goes into 4 figures, I think, each week. So it's been tremendous. But they're also all over the world, so which is great. It's such a simple concept, and I think that's partly the secret of its success. Is if you keep things simple and stick to some kind of core principles, then and don't let too many rules get in the way. And I think that's fundamentally, it is a very simple concept, and it does depend on volunteers, but I find people are very willing to give up time, actually, if they can really see that there's a benefit in it, and we've found, even with the small extra bits and pieces that we do, that actually if you ask, somebody will give you a hand with something, and you don't necessarily feel that you have to do absolutely everything for the group yourself. You can just sort of say, well, if we want to do a social event, and someone will organise that for us, and things like that. So it's nice. It's true. I think you find that people generally, it gives them a bit of purpose and a bit of meaning, and people, I think deep down, people like to be a part of something, and to support something, and to help out, and something that's worthwhile. And it feels to me like that the movement with parkrun and what you're doing with Revolution Runners, and you're seeing it well, I think there's a general uptake in people. Lots of things like cycling's become so much popular over the past 10 years, and I think it's going both ways. There's people becoming even more unfit, but then there's a real movement for people to make their change. I know it's just, it's quite puzzling, because yes, obviously, statistics show that we're becoming worse at so many things, and we've got this a lot of people that you can see are sort of chronically unfit, and finding time to be fit, I know, is often a huge challenge, that you do have to give time up to it, and we're increasingly a very time poor society, it feels like. I feel that myself, but the ways for us to do that there are many more ways that don't necessarily involve huge expense and cost. And I mean, and that's the great thing about running is that fundamentally you don't have to spend a lot.
There's no gym membership.
No, you don't have to pay to join a gym. You can fit it around your lifestyle quite easily, and you don't have to do as much as I think sometimes people think. That if you get yourself up to running 2 or 3 miles 3 times a week, that's great, and that's enough, to sort of to start that kind of journey. No one has to start running and then think the ultimate aim is to run a marathon. There's nothing wrong with never running further than 3 miles. But if you do that often, then it'll make a huge difference to your health. And I think there's so much evidence as well that exercising out of doors is much better for us than being sort of gym bound. And I hate gyms. But connecting with the outside world and being able to run in areas of natural beauty, that's lovely as well. I mean, that feels like a privilege when you get those days where the weather's lovely and you can find a nice part of the country to run in, and I just feel really kind of blessed that I can enjoy the outside world in that way. It's great.
And even locally here, like, I'm not a native for Newton yet. I had lived here for about 10 years before I really started to run, and then get to see the place more. And like you say, there's some lovely little routes, the canals and stuff. And I'm so with you on that in terms of like gyms, because you can often see people are just running on this stationary machine, headphones in, or watching the TV, and there's a complete disconnect.
Yeah.
I think if you're out, like even just here, I can hear the birds a little bit outside, and you're out and you're running and the sun's out, you literally feel so much better when you come back.
Yeah.
So much better. I'm sure the gym makes you feel good as well, but I think there's so much extra with that nature support.
I think so, yeah. And I think, and you're right, we are lucky around here, because I think if you look at a map, you wouldn't necessarily think we would have the access that we do to quite nice little patches, because it feels a bit like we're hemmed in on all sides by towns and cities even. But yeah, there are some lovely stretches, and you can get completely away and not really see anybody. The Sankey Valley Canal Path's lovely, but even some of the roads around here, you don't have to run very far before you're surrounded by fields and lots of trees and as you say, the bird song. There's one route I do where sometimes in the spring there's a woodpecker, and it's lovely as you kind of run down and you just hear that sound, and it's great. And there's a virtue with running in a gym and sort of getting in a zone, I suppose, but it's not the same. I think this connecting with out of doors and it's partly finding that inner child as well. I think when you're a kid and you just play outside, and running outside is the closest that a lot of adults get to play, I think, these days. So yeah,
definitely. And one thing I've definitely come to notice, Joan, is that some good success stories as well. Like I've been with you group for about 18 months, and James is the one that stands out the most for me.
Yeah.
He, just to paint a little bit of a picture, he was, I think he said to me that he was, the reason that inspired him to run is that he was in a supermarket and he was going to go and run and just grab the trolley, and he only went about so many yards and he was completely out of breath, and he felt like he really needs to have a sit down. And seeing him now, I think he's lost well over 6 stone.
Yeah.
And I saw, just chatting to him this morning, he said he'd ran 1,000 miles last year. This year already he's run 200. He's done 2 half marathons this year. He really is an inspiration to the group and to other people.
Yeah.
And to all the people in that he'll know, his friends and families, to see that he's gone from someone who would have been classed as, a really unfit person. And he's totally transformed it through this group. Yeah,
no, he has. And I remember when he first came along, and occasionally people turn up. Week 1, you always get more people, and there's always some that disappear after a week or two. And my husband remembers chatting to James and sort of thinking, he's going to find this really tough. I don't know if he'll make it. But he did. He absolutely stuck with it, and he was. It was so hard for him, and he didn't pretend it wasn't hard, and he was slow, but the weight started to come off, and he worked so hard in that first year of running. When the sort of proper running club that I'm also a member of, we train at the track in Warrington in the over the sort of spring summer period, and James asked if he could come along, so he did, and he was always at the obviously always at the back, but he's got the most fantastic sprint. He's an ex-rugby player, and over 100 metres he can knock spots off most people, and he works really, really hard, and you just gradually saw the weight come off, his times come down, and of course that hugely incentivised him. But yeah, he's a real inspiration, and it's been lovely this year. He's been helping out both with our beginners and the beginners at the Warrington Club as well, which he joined, and he, you can't argue with him standing there and saying, if I can do it, anybody can, so yeah, he's been probably our biggest success story, but also Wendy, who coaches one of our beginner groups as well. I mean, she found it really, really tough. She was in our second group of beginners, and I can vividly remember taking her on the sort of the Rob Lane loop, our infamous 5k. And the first bit, as you'll know, you run downhill, and then you've got a fairly nasty uphill to go up. And I remember going up with her alongside, and she was really panicking about breathing, and she was saying, I can't breathe, and I was telling her to slow down and just take some deep breaths, and we got to the top, and we were due a little walk, and we had a little walk, and I was explaining to her that part of the problem with breathing is that you start to panic and you think you can't breathe, and then you can't breathe because you're panicking, and it is partly a mental issue. It's fear as much as anything, and we turned around and we were running back the other way, so of course then we go down and then up again, I ran alongside her, and she got up the second hill, and I know how hard that was. It really, really was, and she was at the back of the group, and she found it a real struggle. But she's gone on to run a half marathon. She's done a metric marathon, so 26.2 kilometres, and now she coaches, and it's great, and I know how much running means to her as a result, and so we've got quite a few fairly inspiring people, and runners of all shapes and sizes, which is one of the other lovely things I like about running. You can't look at somebody and think, well, they won't be very fast. You can't make that judgment, because you get people of all sizes, and they can maybe run faster than the smallest, slimmest looking people in the group. It's you just can't ever judge, and you don't know what people will be capable of, and that's the really nice thing about it, actually. And they don't know either, so particularly when they start out. And you can say, like now, week 7, we've just said to the beginners, you think back to week 1, 7 weeks ago, you were doing a minute of running and 2 minutes of walking, and that minute of running was really hard, and now they've all, sort of run round a 5k for the first time. And so most of them have been running for 35 minutes plus without stopping, so that's fantastic, and they never thought they'd do that.
Yeah, and that must feel really good for you to see, you've set this up, not having, you set it up with the idea of to encourage people and to inspire them, but not knowing the sort of success stories that would happen. So it must feel good for you, like James and others who have really transformed their lives in many ways. No,
I do. I love it, and my favourite. Some of my favourite moments in running have been nothing to do with my own running. I do get a huge buzz out of seeing people achieve more than they ever thought they would, and yeah, the first time people do a kind of a non-stop run, the first time we get them around that 5k loop, when the groups I've taken through half marathon training, and the plan that we always follow with them. They actually run further than a half marathon. A couple of weeks before, we try and persuade them to do 14 miles because I think it's a really good mental boost. And I remember with Wendy doing that and getting to the point where I looked at my watch and I said, right, you've now run a half marathon. And she was just whooping for joy. She was so ecstatic. And she just couldn't believe that she'd done it, that she was still running and she was going to finish this 14 miles. And it was just amazing. Yeah, I love those moments. I really, really do. And even when, you know, it's those things that they've got me through my own sort of tough times, to be honest. If I've been a bit injured and I can't run myself, then being able to still kind of come along and encourage people in the group and see all that still happening, then that's great. I really like that bit.
And as well as terms of, like, it doesn't matter about ages either. That's a great thing. You know, I was chatting with someone this morning that I haven't chatted to before, and I think he started running in his mid-50s, and he just saw something on TV, and then he heard about the park run, and he turned around to his wife and said, I'm going to run a park run. And she kind of probably looked at him thinking, yeah, of course you are. You know, and they both did it together. Yeah. And they both showed up, and they did it, and it wasn't fast, but it didn't matter. It was like they showed up, and then it's led to him joining this group. Yeah.
No, we've had plenty of. In fact, I think probably our sort of vet beginners outnumber the young beginners, to be honest. I think we've found most people have come relatively late in life. We've got one runner who's 70, who's been doing half marathons, and it's probably never too late to start, actually, as long as you start appropriately. But if you feel fit and healthy in other ways, if you've never run before, then there are plenty of stories of people who've started really late in life, and I think a classic time to start in some ways is probably when you're in your kind of late 30s, early 40s, when you start to think, I can't take for granted that I can run up the stairs without getting out of breath anymore. And I think that's often when people start. I was in my late 30s when I started running. I'd always done kind of something, but and played quite a lot of team sports and things, but I'd never really particularly worked at keeping fit, so to speak. But decided to do the Great Manchester Run 10k for charity, and it kind of went from there. Kind of decided that it was something I quite enjoyed. But it took a while before it really became a habit.
Yeah, it can do, can't it?
Yeah.
And something that I'd really like to talk about is the mental side of things as well. It seems so important. I find I've been talking to people and how my mental state just improves so much different. Like, to do that first thing on a Saturday, to come back after you shower, you can feel so alive sometimes, and gives you a boost and gives you that focus. And I know there's a little program, is it Walk and Talk, that you've been doing?
Run and Talk. So Run and Talk is a national initiative that has Mind, the charity, kind of started, but they've now linked up with English Athletics, and they have deliberately kind of sought to recruit running groups and clubs, but also informal groups like ourselves, with the idea of making sure that within those groups there are sort of mental health champions, and you can do as many sort of run and talk runs as you like, but this year they wanted a particular focus during Mental Health Week, and provided, some sort of additional publicity and ways of kind of tapping into that support, and it seemed like a really good initiative for us to link in with, because I'm just aware that there's plenty in the group who are very open about the fact that running is a very important part of their kind of mental health, so I asked whether we had people who were willing to act as mental health champions, and lots came forward, including people who were already in that kind of role at their work, for example, so they're quite experienced, and it's again, it fits really nicely with what we do, because there's no sort of compulsion about it. It's just really making sure that people are aware that you're a safe place for them, so they can come along, they can run, they can talk or not, they, you know, you can sort of designate particular runs as being kind of run and talk runs. So we did that during Mental Health Week, and I think we might try and do one every so often where we'll particularly sort of signpost it as being one of those. But I think, again, it's partly that kind of being out of doors, being within a group. I think sometimes for me it's the fact that you can talk about almost anything else than what might be at the back of your mind. But somehow when you get to the end of the run, things have receded a little bit, and you just, and yeah, it's, you know, when we're getting endorphins, and, you know, there are chemical reasons for it. But there's also just a sense of whether it's because you're running to a rhythm, and, you know, your sort of breathing's rhythmic, and you kind of focus on just putting one foot in front of the other, and it just somehow helps to get a bit of a perspective back, I think, as well. But I think also those kind of personal goals and that kind of self-belief that comes through succeeding, and maybe running through a slightly tougher run where it's not been brilliant but you've got to the end, those are all kind of quite useful aspects as well. And I think, you know, if you can force yourself to run hard up a hill a few times, then you know, that's quite a good thing to be able to draw on, and to, you know, to know that you can remember those points in time where, you know, yeah, I toughed it out and I got to the end, and so people gain a bit more confidence and self-esteem as well that goes with it, and that's good. And there are lots of stories of people finding, you know, sort of new ways of looking at themselves and thinking about themselves through running, and pushing themselves in that way, and being aware that they're capable of more than they thought, and that they're stronger than they thought.
Yeah, actually, by doing it, whether you achieve to do the 5k or you decide to do a 10k or half marathon, marathon, that just then goes across many other parts of your life as well, because you think, well, if I can do that and that thing, and I've only just started running, then I can attempt to do these other things that I didn't really have the belief in myself to do it. I think
exactly.
It's very transferred.
I think so, and I think it kind of it makes you realise that it's okay to not be able to do something the first time you do it, which I think as adults is another thing that we often lose sight of. That, you know, if you look at children when they're learning to do something, when children are learning to walk, they fall over all the time when they're first learning to walk. Well, they don't ever just think, oh, I might as well give up, do they? You know, they just carry on getting up, and they keep going until finally they don't fall over anymore. And I think as grown-ups, we kind of forget that you might fail the first time you do something, and that's okay. So I think when you run, we all have runs which don't go very well for whatever reason. We may not ever know the reason, but maybe we're just a bit too tired, or we didn't sleep very well the night before, or for whatever reason, it just doesn't happen, and we don't particularly enjoy it, and we find it really hard, and we find it really tough. But that doesn't mean you never run again. It just means, you know, next time you go out, suddenly it all goes a bit better, and you think, that's okay, it was just a blip. And I think being kind of aware that that's okay, that we can admit that things are tough sometimes, and that it is difficult, and that we found it difficult, and it isn't a sign of weakness, and it's not going to make anybody think, oh, I thought you were better than that. You know, we all have bad days, and I think being able to just be aware and be open about the fact that we all have bad days, and when we do have a bad day, going for a run might make us feel a bit better, then that's all there is to it, really. It is again quite simple, but I'm hoping that it'll be something we'll do a bit more of, and that it might even bring us, sort of some new runners who otherwise perhaps wouldn't have come with us.
I find just built up some nice friendships in the group, and some particular ones, and we've really opened up on some of our runs, like having some really good chats. And there's something definitely about being outside and running, and it's also because sometimes people can find challenging opening up. Say if you're just sat opposite someone looking them eye to eye, it can be far more challenging if you're running side by side and you're surrounded by other people and nature and other noises. It feels like it gives you an opportunity to be more open. And then when you open up, and then if someone else opens up, I often feel like if you open up, the other person feels like they can open up and say, oh right, okay, I didn't realise you felt like that, or that had happened. And it's a great way of just realising that, we've all got our own challenges at times, and running or whatever can be a great way to release that.
I think so, and you're right. I think the fact that you are often alongside as opposed to opposite definitely makes it easier. You don't have that sense of having to make eye contact and feel that somebody's sort of really, really focused. It's almost as if you're not quite talking to yourself, but there is an element of just, and you can choose how much you want to say, but I think within the group, I'm often staggered at what people cope with. Actually, when some of what is going on in their lives, and it's very true to. I know when you're having a tough time, you think you're the only person who's struggling, but that just is never the case. We nearly everybody has got some aspect that's difficult, and so I think. Sharing things and being more open about that is only good, really. And you can look at somebody that you thought had everything and life is just wonderful, and then suddenly you hear that maybe it's not, and they're for whatever reason they're struggling themselves, and it's lovely. And you're right, we've got. One couple of ladies who you'd think had been friends forever. Actually have only met through Resolution Runners, so they've known each other a couple of years, but they're completely inseparable, and it's lovely, and they get on really, really well, but and they did so within about 3 weeks, to the extent that we all thought that they'd come along kind of together, but they just kind of buddied up in week one, and
meant to be.
And definitely,
yeah, that sounds great. So you mentioned before that you've it feels quite empowering if you're in a particular place, you can just go off and go running yourself. Where's your, some of the highlights of places that you might have put your trainers on and gone for a run, whether it be on a holiday or wherever? I've had some nice holiday runs actually, and I often say to people in the group when they're going on holiday, I treat holiday running as a bit of a bonus, because I think, you are on holiday. But you're a runner when you take your running shoes on holiday and you actually use them. And one of my top holiday runs was we had a few days in the Isle of Arran a few years ago when Alex, our son, his brass band were there on tour. And we were staying in a hotel, and we were really lucky with the weather because we went at the end of August, and it could have been horrendous, but it was absolutely beautiful. So it was clear and it was sunny, and there was this lovely sort of quite kind of mountainous trail not far from the hotel along something called the Glen Rosa path. So there was a river at the bottom, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And the second time I ran it by myself. And it was quite hilly. It was hillier than I'm used to from being around here. But I got up off the road and onto the start of the trail, and there were 2 golden eagles that I could hear sort of circling above my head. Wow.
And it was one of those where, I just felt privileged, really, that I could enjoy that type of scenery by running through it. And it was a beautiful day, and I saw quite a few people walking, and they were all commenting on, oh, you must be really fit, sort of, because I was running and not walking, and that was lovely. And I'm freely admit that I got a real boost from them thinking, that I'm not that fit, but it was just, and I ran I did about 7 miles, but it was out and back, so I got to the point where I thought I really need to turn around, and I just stopped, and it was very warm, and there was a stream, and I went and I sort of put my hands in the stream and chucked water over my face and just looked around, and it was absolutely beautiful. And that would still be one of those where, you know, you kind of shut your eyes and think, yeah, that was a really lovely run. I really enjoyed that one. But I've run in New York and Central Park. That's exciting because it's just so iconic and so familiar. You know, you feel like you recognise it from all those films and TV series. And so I've done that a couple of times, and that's lovely. There's a reservoir right in the middle with a running loop round it, and you can stop on that point and look across and sort of see the skyline, and it's just great. So that was a nice one as well. And I've run in Paris, and it's which was hard work actually, because it's not really very well geared up for runners. So too many rows to cross, very stop-start. So it was a bit frustrating, but it's fun running on holiday, you know, and it's nice to be able to do it without. It's not one to do where you're obsessing about how fast you're running. You know, it's a different sort of run. You need to be able to stop, take the odd photograph, and enjoy it. So it's nice to be able to explore. Some places do have like running tours that you can actually book onto, which I've never done, but might be another thing to think about. I think you can do that in New York, and they definitely do some in Edinburgh, and there's a guy in Chester who does a running kind of tour, 5k around sort of, you know, bits of historic Chester.
What a great way to see places and stuff, to take it in, and also be meeting new people, like-minded people.
Yeah. So that might be something to look at. But yeah, holiday running is good. Definitely.
I absolutely love that story. Isle of Arran, seeing 2 eagles.
Oh, it was perfect.
That is absolutely priceless.
Yeah.
You could not. Yeah, that'll stay with you until.
Yeah, no,
to the end of time.
It really was. It was gorgeous, that one. Yeah, so wow. I think that's probably top run.
Yeah, when we were in Mexico last year, I had the half marathon coming up, my first one, and I was like, I'm gonna have to take my running shoes, and I did, and it felt really good just to go out, and the temperature, humidity was really high, but just to go out and get a few miles in and just experience it in a new place, it felt really, really good. Really, really good. And one thing I'll just touch on there in terms of what's really helped me with this group, and for me training for my first half marathon, the way that you'd set up the programme and the way that was, it really supported me to just go out and just achieve certain distances, do these slow runs, which would be counterintuitive to how I would be trained to think I have to be running faster, but it's actually by running slower and longer, that's what gives me the stamina and the strength.
Yeah.
So that's been really supportive. So anyone who's listening to this who's thinking about doing some races or runs, then it's really important, I think, to be part of a group or have a really good program in place.
Yeah, it does. It definitely makes it easier when you've got other people to train kind of alongside. I think for those big races, particularly the first time you do them, and you're right. And again, one of the things behind setting up the group was that sense of helping people not make the mistakes, and the classic one is feeling like you have to run every training run slightly faster than you ran it last time, and that just isn't an effective way to train, and persuading people to run a long slow run slowly, is quite hard, and you know, it can take a week or two for people to buy into it, because they're just not used to running at that.
You feel pretty sore.
Yeah.
When you run
it's just completely different. Yeah, and it uses your muscles in completely different ways. But it's how you build that stamina, and actually your aerobic fitness improves as well. So getting those runs right, if you want to run sort of half marathon or beyond, is really important. But it can be quite challenging, and some people, you can always feel, are never quite convinced that it's actually the best way of doing it, but it really is.
Well, it worked for me.
Yeah.
It definitely worked for me when I was doing the half marathon, the last couple of miles. it gave me that strength
Yeah.
to get through there. So if people are thinking about setting up, or not necessarily setting up a group, but just want to get out there running, is there loads of great resources available for people? I know the internet's full of them, but is there any particular ones?
Well, I have to say, if you want to just sort of start yourself, finding some sort of community to engage with, if not your local community, then a virtual one is also a good idea. And I'm a huge fan of a website called fetcheveryone.com, which is a mostly running website. And it's where you can just use it as a resource to sort of log your own training and never engage with it, but it is also full of lovely people. There are sort of kind of discussion forums, loads of resources in terms of setting up. There's a whole area for beginners which gives you lots of advice on how to get going, and then you can kind of connect with other beginners and share your experiences and that kind of thing. Because I think doing it completely by yourself is hard. I think some people maybe get something out of doing it by themselves, and because it's very noticeable, we've certainly found over the years that we don't get nearly as many men turning up to the complete beginners as we do women. The men often come along when they've got themselves to 5k, and then they kind of think, I'd now like a group to run with, and whereas women seem to be a bit more kind of willing to engage with the whole process from the word go and accept that they need help with everything. I don't know, maybe that's just a very sexist comment, but that's how it appears. So I would say, sort of connect up. Don't do it by yourself. I did, and it's just definitely much harder. And I wish I'd kind of joined a group much sooner than I did. Don't ever think that there won't be somebody who is in exactly the same position as you. I suppose there will be somebody who is finding it just as difficult, and who is no faster and no stronger than you. So Fetch Everyone is a great place. You can use there's Run Together is another good website which lists all sorts of groups, so not just formal running clubs, but groups like ours. We're on there, so you can just put your postcode in, and you'll get sort of pointed in the direction of groups near you, and they will basically sort of have information on there about the sorts of running that those groups do, so the types of distances, whether it's suitable for beginners or people wanting to improve, that kind of thing. And the Run and Talk runs are all listed there as well. That's how England Athletics support that initiative. So if you're looking for that type of thing, then that's a place to go. But there are, I don't want to kind of diss formal running clubs either, because they vary a lot. There are some which are almost on the edge of kind of being elite athletics clubs, but there are plenty that have their own beginners initiatives, and they'll let if they haven't got anything suitable for a beginner, and maybe sort of point you towards somewhere else locally that has. But certainly once you're already running, then connecting with your local club is a really good thing to do, and it's certainly a good way to improve and get stronger. And if you've got goals and objectives about running that first half marathon, or then you'll get sort of help and support there as well. So
that sounds great. Plenty of pointers there to go in the direction. And something else that I've found really interesting that I've been seeing over the past year or two is the idea of plugging. So,
yes.
People are using it, as an opportunity to clean up the towns and the cities, to get out there and running. It's sometimes we'll see on some of our runs, you think, could do with a bit of a clean up.
I think we should do one of those, because one or two of our routes, occasionally you do look around and think, oh god, particularly along the East Lancs where people are chucking things out the car windows, I think sometimes. But I think that's definitely another one to put on our list of objectives, and it's great. I mean, I think it seems to me the running community in all shapes and forms has never been anything other than kind of warm, welcoming and supportive. And I think there are lots of really positive things that go on that are kind of connected. There's a thing called Good Gym as well, which is mostly kind of London focused, I think is where it started, but where they use runners to actually kind of connect up with people in the community, and so maybe you'll kind of do some shopping for a neighbour, but you kind of run to the shop and run back with the shopping, so it's kind of part of your run, but it's kind of doing other bits and pieces like that, and that's quite a good initiative as well. But there isn't anything. They haven't got anything up here yet, but maybe they will one day. But there's certainly a few down in London that are connected to that.
I think there's a few dotted over in parts of Manchester.
Yeah,
maybe as well.
Yeah.
It feels like it's the ultimate do-gooder thing,
yeah,
isn't it?
It
Really?
does.
It's like it's taking it to a whole new level to make you feel good in yourself, and knowing that you're helping others.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It's nice that them things are spawning from this, and people are still getting in the morning runs, but they're tying it in. Well, okay, instead of do that loop, we'll run to the shops in that town, and then we'll run back and stuff. So it's nice to see.
We've done our food bank runs a couple of times, which is good as well. So you bring along something, hopefully not too heavy, and then we run to the food bank in Tesco's and then drop it off and then carry on, and that's worked quite well.
It does. And when we're all in there, people are looking around at us. 30 or 40 of us.
Yes, in our high vis.
Yeah. But I think that's great because people can be inspired by that and wanting to get involved, and it's really good. So I think we're coming to the close of this. It's had a really nice flow to it, and it's been nice hearing about the story and stuff. I think it has it. But what I'd like to ask all my guests, so since this podcast is about doing good and something that I think that you very much have been doing good for your local community and stuff, I'm interested to hear what maybe thoughts or advice you may offer others who are thinking about going out and doing their own little bit of good, whatever it may be. But I'd love to hear that from you.
Well, I think that's a very good question, but I think we spent too long thinking about it. So I think my advice would be just to have a go, and don't be afraid to start very small. We just put a note up on Facebook and said we're thinking of doing this, and you can come along and it's free and this is who we are. And we had no idea how many people would turn up, and if it had only been 2 or 3, that would have been fine. And I think sometimes you just have to start and be prepared for it to maybe take a while before something is kind of ingrained locally. So don't necessarily give up if the first time you do something only 3 people come. That doesn't mean it's not worked, because for those 3 people you might have made a really big difference. Just start. If you think you've got a good idea and it appeals to you, then probably it will appeal to someone else. It just might take a while for you to connect up with those people, so be prepared to just keep doing it, and if you've decided. So with something like us, we'll be there at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and there'll always be someone at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning that you can run 5k with. That was at its simplest, in a sense, I suppose, where we've ended up. We would just always make sure that happened. And if there was only ever one other person, that would be fine.
I think that's great. That sounds like really sound advice, and something that I can really relate to, in terms of often we can overthink stuff and think, I'll do it once I've planned all this and I've got all this ready, when really the key seems to be just start before you're ready, and make it up as you go along. Yeah,
and I think that's it. And I think, and if at heart, if your intentions are good, and fundamentally your idea is good, then people are very forgiving. They won't mind if it's not been planned to the nth degree.
They won't even notice it either.
They probably won't. And particularly if you're doing something voluntarily and it's free, and then
it takes the pressure off.
It does, yeah, definitely, it does. I mean, we've never had, when we've always been very responsive. If people have been slightly unhappy because something's not gone, terribly well, or they've felt like they've had to work too hard, or we always try and react to that and be sensitive to it. But fundamentally, we know what we're about now, and I think we just sort of stick to that. So if people turn up and like they're not willing to turn around and run back to the person at the back of the group, well then don't run with us, because that's what we're about and that's what we do. So we kind of stick to our rules and be very clear about that, so people fit in, or they don't, but the vast majority do. Yeah.
Sounds great. Well, it's been really good talking to you today. I'm looking forward to my next run out with the group on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So there we have it. There's my episode of Elly all wrapped up. I hope you enjoyed that one. I just wanted to share her Elly's message because I think it's really inspiring what she's doing, and it just goes to show that any of us can go out there and do our own little bit of good, but also get a lot of goodness out of it ourselves. And particularly in Elly's case, it's getting out there and just really keeping fit. And for me, I've been part of the group now for 18 months or so, and it's really supported me. Had a massive impact, I think, on my health and my well-being and my mental state particularly. So if anyone's out there who's thinking of want to do some exercise, like I was absolutely pants at running, going right back. I run a little bit here and there, but I get stitches really easily and really quickly and be out of breath after a couple of minutes running. Now I can, run for well over an hour, even longer, and not feel like that. So it's just been a nice, slow and steady development for me, and something that it's really like, it's empowering. It feels really good, taking our health in our own hands, and it sets us up really well. Like I've touched about in a few episodes, I think the stronger we are, the healthier we are, the more likely we are to do some more good in ourselves and our lives and other lives. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please check out the show notes below for some of the things that we spoke about. And until next time, have a good one. Oh, and before I go, just, if you like this, please like, share, subscribe, or share it with a friend that you think might like this. And please leave me some comments, and I'll gladly read them out at the next episode and stuff. And if you're on Apple, please leave me a review. So anyway, guys, thanks a lot. Until next time, have a good one.